Take three.
Hey, everybody, welcome to another clean-shaven episode of Phil and the Mic. I, as always, am Darren Michael, and with me, the man who was out all night preparing for the enormous upcoming snowstorm, Mr. Phil Cleese. Phil, you got to be exhausted, although I don't know what the hell you were doing.
I mean, I thought, it really was related to the clean shaven. I was up there, late night barber, trimming it up, nice shave, nice hot towel, giving you the works. But yeah, big snowstorm coming to the Northeast. We'll see. It's one of those things where, you plan for 5 days, you look at, a million charts, and then you get it all wrong. And then afterwards you go, it's the weather. What do you want me to do? It's unpredictable. I called for a foot. You got flurries. What do you want?
I mean, think about it, right? If you're a weather person and you can predict the weather correct 50% of the time, you're a Hall of Fame baseball player, right? But if you predicted 50%, but if in your job you got 50% of things right, you wouldn't have a job. So it's very
you'd be an unemployed worker. Yeah, exactly.
It's very interesting. But you know what? All of the I think all of our audience wants to know the same thing, and that's going to be, after this big snowstorm and you're outside, trying to dig yourself out. When you look around your street, is everybody going to be wearing a mask also?
So no, not. Well, we may have one of those gaiters that cover your face from the 40-mile-an-hour wind and negative nine degree.
No, I'm talking specifically about protecting yourself from COVID, because if it's really windy, there's going to be a lot of COVID floating in the air, and you don't want to get it.
You're right. I think originally back in March of 2020, COVID flew 37 and a half feet. It was the long jump champion.
Yeah, I heard.
I'm not sure how many feet it travels now, but certainly 37 and a half was the high mark by Anthony Fauci 2 years ago. I'm Anthony Fauci, and I approve 37 feet.
The interesting
love that guy.
Is,
Shout out Anthony. Listen,
did you even realize that the Olympics is a week away?
I really didn't, and I actually completely forgot the Olympics was coming. And then right? I saw something in one of the articles I was reading online, like, oh, we did a send-off to the U.S. some team. I don't even know. I think it was like the women's something. And I was like, oh my gosh, we're really doing this, huh? Yeah. Going to China.
But you know what? Listen, I don't know what's going to happen, but I think COVID might be representing China in the long jump. So we got to be careful about that.
Yeah, I think it's Omicron. They're going to announce it.
and that'd
be hilarious. That would be hilarious. If like a graphic, they'll never do it in like our media, but if like a spoof media does like Omicron as the like first bronze medal to Omicron, and then you see it's the Chinese symbol, that'd be funny. I'd get a chuckle out of it.
You know what? You might want to contact SNL about that. That's a great.
They're not doing it. I don't think. Maybe they would. They might.
Sometimes they cross the line. You never know.
You brought up something hilarious. I want our viewers to go search on YouTube for the SNL Eric Adams spoof. Has anybody seen it? The new mayor of New York City.
No, I haven't seen it. I guess
it's played by. It's a couple weeks old, I think, or a week old. It's played by Chris Redd. Chris Redd plays Eric Adams as the and it's hilarious. It is absolutely hilarious. You have to search it, find it on YouTube. You'll laugh for 6-7 minutes straight.
Okay.
It's my little tip for the day. For the day going into a snowstorm where we'll all be hibernating here, at least in the Northeast.
Yeah. I mean, listen, dude, it's going to be cold here. It's going to be 34 tomorrow as a high. So we're feeling it too.
Did you guys ever you got snow, didn't you? The South got hit, right? Maybe not Georgia.
The problem is our roads are because it's warm down here. Well, not warm, but it's warmer. It snows a little bit and it doesn't stick because the ground and the roads are just too warm. Yeah. So,
but if it does stick a half an inch, you guys are shut down for a week.
Yeah. Well, but this is also the funny thing, right? They said that it's got the potential to be a major snowstorm, and when I inquired a little further, I found that a major snowstorm in Atlanta is more than 0.2 of an inch. So we probably
get the chains on the tires out, boys and girls. It's going to be dangerous.
We probably got more than 0.2 of an inch. But it didn't stick. And by the time it was, like 11 o'clock in the morning, you wouldn't even know that it snowed the day before. So,
right. That makes sense.
I wanted to tell you one thing before we get into it. I got I keep sending out my autograph requests and everything. And I've gotten some funny responses. This I've never gotten before. Right. It was a guy. He was a great football player. His name is Jack Rudnay. he was on the Chiefs for a long time. He was a center back in like the 70s and early 80s. And I wrote to him, and I had enclosed some cards, and actually I am a fan of his. I think he was a phenomenal player. I think he was like a 5-time All-Star, something like that, All-Pro. So he was a good player for a long time. And he writes me back, and he writes something like, Darren, thanks so much for supporting my career. Hope you're well. And then signs Jack Running, right? So I open it up and I'm like, oh, this is good. He didn't sign any of my cards. I'm like, dude,
What?
yeah, thank you for. I'm like, sign my freaking card. That's the letter is nice and all, but I want my card signed. So
He didn't do the one thing you requested. Yeah.
I actually sent his letter back to him yesterday, and I wrote underneath it. I said, hey, thank you so much for responding. Is there any way you might be able to sign these cards for me too? So I thought that was pretty funny.
Think it was purposeful or an oversight?
I think it was an oversight, personally. It's just funny. I mean, it's really interesting because I'm on some of these different Facebook groups, and every now and then, like, a former player will post a picture of themselves, with all their mail and stuff. And I'm looking at this one guy. I don't even know who he was. I think he played like half of a season in like 2007, something like that. And he was saying how he loves signing for fans, and and he's always going to keep doing it. And they showed his fan mail, and it was like piled up like you wouldn't believe. I mean, everybody is getting fan mail. So I'm not even special writing to these guys. They're just I'm surprised the guy even reads the letter, because some of these guys just get tons and tons. There was
when do you think, it's interesting, like how many years back do you think it became like from the most scarce thing they would get to now like mainstream, they get tons of it? Is it 10 years? Is it 5 years?
Well, there's a few things. Within the last 20 years, a guy has actually been putting out a list of home addresses.
Mm-hmm.
So people have access, and then there's websites that have the addresses. So anybody that's interested can write to these guys. And what happens is people are trying to collect sets. And so what do we know about sets? Well, they've got great and terrible players. So the guys that weren't any good are still going to get a lot of mail. But it's funny. I was talking to my mom about this morning, and back when I started collecting cards, which was 1980, there was a lot of older, great Hall of Famers that were still alive at that time. And the stories that I hear, they all would sign through the mail. Everybody, like nowadays, like I've written to Sandy Koufax over the years, probably 20 times. I actually got him back one time, which I still can't believe I got it back. But like guys like that used to sign. I mean, they'd get a letter, they would sign it and send it back. Like, I mean, it was unbelievable. Any of these old school players that were alive in the 80s, and there were quite a few, they would all sign. So those guys that got kind of a head start on it. I mean, I've heard stories about people sending letters way back when to Babe Ruth, and him signing and sending them back. Wow. So these guys all used to sign. Everybody would sign, but it was just something you did. You were just thankful somebody like was appreciative of you, and and you weren't getting crushed. Whereas these guys that like I said, the guy played half a season. I've never heard of him, and he was getting tons and tons of mail. So wow, interesting. So it is what it is. It is what it is. Some fun stuff, but man, I can see that you're getting anxious. And why are you getting anxious? Because Phil Calise did it. 4-0 last week in the playoffs. Unbelievable. And we're going to get into this. We're going to get into this because I personally think that was the best weekend of playoff football in the history of football. Yeah. And we'll get into that. Yeah, but, I think we would agree. Yeah. But, I mean, we always say the same thing every week, and that is we'd love to just see some good games. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to go right into the top 5 questions for the week. Let's do it. And as I just mentioned, the greatest weekend ever. All right. There were 4 games. And the crazy thing about this, and I guarantee this has never happened, although I wish I had bet on it. Each game had a field goal, a meaningful field goal with no time left on the clock at the end of the game. Each one. All right. So you had Cincinnati and Tennessee tied at 16, kicked a field goal. Cincinnati won by 3 at the end of the game. 49ers Packers they were tied at 10. 49ers kick a field goal at the very end. Rams Bucks, somehow we're going to talk about that game because that game was crazy. Rams Bucks were tied at 27. And what happens? No time left. Rams go down the field, kick a field goal, win by 3. Chiefs Bills, right? I want to talk about that game.
Game of the decade.
That was absurd.
Forget
In
game
the
of the
last
year.
minute 52, they scored 25 points, right? I mean, here you are, you're going back and forth. The Bills must have been feeling really good about themselves, up by 3 points with 12 seconds to go and kicking off, and they lose in overtime. I mean, unbelievable. So, just crazy. I mean, how do you even explain 4 unbelievable games like that?
Well, it was a situation where you could have predicted, and I did, and we talked about it. It looked like it was going to be a good week.
Yeah.
A good weekend of football. The matchups seemed to be there, right? You didn't have the strongest 1 seeds, which helped make, that matchup more, more competitive, right? A good young Bengal team had a real legitimate shot to go to a bit of an overrated or an unlikely 1 seed in Tennessee. Obviously, the Niners were a game team, and I talked about how that weather in Lambeau would work to the Niners' benefit, and it did. They want to run the ball, what have you. So that made sense to be a tough game, good matchup. Rams Bucks, I thought Rams were the better team, and for about 3.5 quarters, they were blowing out Tampa, and my prediction was spot on. And then I don't know, a little Tom Brady magic, a little Rams disaster, and bada bing, bada boom. It's a dogfight late. And then the Chiefs Bills live up to the hype. That always had the potential with the 2 best young big quarterbacks in the NFL going head to head, and it lived up to the hype. So I think it was a unique weekend where the potential for 4 good games exceeded by a lot, and you already had high hopes. So you can't get a better weekend. And unfortunately, in my long history of watching football, usually a weekend like this is now going to be followed with a ugly weekend of sports, and that's a prelude to my predictions coming up.
No, there's no doubt about it. No, let's talk a little bit about that Bucks game. I mean, the Rams are they're destroying the Bucks all game. And then all of a sudden in the fourth quarter, Tom Brady decides, hey, you know what? Maybe I should play. Maybe I should start actually completing some passes here. And next thing you know, it's 27-27. And you felt so much momentum that honestly, I thought this thing was going into overtime. I thought the Bucks were going to win. I did not think the Rams had a chance because the momentum had shifted so much. It was just unbelievable. And I think go ahead.
No, it really, listen, it's 27-6 late, I believe in the third quarter, at least, before Tampa scores their first touchdown. And then it didn't really go where there was this dramatic there was a dramatic fourth quarter comeback, but the fourth quarter didn't get owned by Tampa. Most of it was seen punting back and forth.
Oh yeah.
And then Tampa finally hits on a bomb to Evans, who beats Ramsey, and makes it 27-20 with under 4 minutes to go. And then Cam Akers decides this would be a good time to cough up the ball as I'm basically trying to run out the clock, or put Tampa in a big deficit. And he fumbles on his own 20 or 30. And then it's the floodgates, boom, there goes Tom. And they still have to convert a 4th and 1. Fournette runs one in.
Yeah.
At that point, you do feel like the Rams are going to lose. I will say this, in 2 of the 4 games, at least, there was head scratching defensive calls late. Why Tampa decided to all out blitz Stafford right at the end, and he throws a deep ball real deep to Cooper Kupp, who comes running free. Not the guy you would think would be running free. He's only got 800 catches this year, but somehow they bring the house and they just leave Stafford to backpedal and throw one up, and he's wide open. A crazy defensive plan there by Mr. Todd Bowles, the great former Jet head coach. So that was a strange, almost anticlimactic ending to what could have been an insane game, because you were just oh my gosh, they tied it. And then boom, this play happens and they win on a field goal. So it was kind of a bizarre game. It wasn't actually a good game, but it had a 4-minute stretch that made it a tied game. Really weird.
Crazy, right? Crazy. And you know what? It's just like the Bills Chiefs game, they were scoring points back and forth, but it just, to me, that game was crazy. Seeing how they went back and forth, it just goes to show you how good those offenses are, how good those quarterbacks are. You don't even have to give them any time. And I'll tell you something, man. Shame on the Bills for giving the Chiefs the ball with 13 seconds to go and losing the game. That's all that I'm saying. I'm looking at some of these passes that Mahomes is completing. Cover these friggin' guys.
Well, The thing is, and I heard a lot of people so it wasn't really Monday morning quarterbacking. I heard a lot of people say you got to squib kick the ball and at least force them to run a little time off the clock and don't kick it out of the end zone. They start on the 25s fresh. They did have timeouts. So it was like, don't do that. I got to say, I don't agree with that because I've seen squib kicks become a disaster. I've seen a kicker go to squib it and it doesn't go where they think it's going. It catches somebody kind of on the up line. And
Yeah.
before you know it, 2 seconds later, they're at midfield. 3 seconds later, they're at midfield. So initially, you're like, I don't mind kicking it out of bounds. There's 13 seconds left. You just can't. There was only 2 plays, by the way. People they only had a chance to run 2 plays. They threw a 3-yard pass to Tyreek Hill, but because the defense was so far back and he runs like a deer, he runs 19 yards before he's tackled and it only takes like 5 seconds off the clock. The problem was the next play. There's only like 7 or 8 seconds left, maybe 9 seconds left, eight or 9.
Yeah.
They didn't have to worry about taking the sideline away because the Chiefs had timeout. So that wasn't going to matter. But they actually let Kelsey catch a pass and not get tackled right away. They let him catch a pass and have 10, 15 more yards to run. That's mind-boggling. You have everybody back and still the best player was able to catch a ball and run up the middle of the field. That was the screwiest, weirdest defensive call I've ever seen. Somebody must have blown a coverage. Somebody forgot to do what they were supposed to do. That's insane. That's insane.
Craziest thing. Had to be because, to me, it's like you're watching that and you got these guys way back. Listen, the Chiefs didn't need a touchdown. They weren't going to go for a touchdown. They were going to kick a field goal. They were going to try to send this thing into overtime. That was the goal. That was all that they could really do here. So what the hell are you doing playing that far off these guys? You know where the ball's going. I mean, there's only a few targets. You double team them. It's not like they're going to run the ball. It's not like,
No, you could do one of two things. You could put everybody back, but you put everybody back 10 or 15 yards. When it gets to the second play, you have to say, okay, but we have a line they can't get to or else they'll kick a field goal. So you put everybody back to like, say, the 45 or the 40, and then you're tackling. How Kelsey caught it on the run with space is just crazy. They treated it like the Chiefs had no timeouts left, and the Chiefs had timeouts left. They were going to stop the clock. They had timeouts. I don't know what the Bills were doing. It was crazy. I feel bad for Josh Allen because the guy played a perfect game and lost.
He really did. It was an unbelievable game. But yeah, like you said, I mean, between the Rams game and the Chiefs game, I mean, one defensive miscue basically cost them their season. I mean, if you really look at it, and listen, it could have gone either way, but that's kind of how I look at it. Let's move on to number 2, and I think this is kind of interesting, and that is arguably the two best two of the top 5 quarterbacks. Brady, it could have been his last game in Tampa Bay. Could have been his last game total. And Rodgers, it could have been his last game in Green Bay. Green Bay's got a real big problem. They're like $49 million over the cap next year. Mm-hmm. So they have a real problem. So let me ask you this, and we've talked about Aaron Rodgers a lot, but do you think that this is going to be Brady's last game? And do you think this is Aaron Rodgers' last game as a Packer? Because, one of the things that we know is that the Packers offensive coordinator just became the Broncos head coach. And we know Aaron Rodgers has a good relationship with him. And we know John Elway tends to bring in quarterbacks at the end of their career and win some Super Bowls. So what are your thoughts on those two issues?
So I do believe, and it's interesting, I do believe Tom Brady's going to hang it up. And I think his is in line. So I think there's family pressure to finally end, right? Like he's married to a famous supermodel wife who I think has been clearly taken a back seat to him for a long time and probably did not think he'd ever be playing football this long. And there's probably been some late night conversations in an accent being said to him, it's enough, dude. And I think he's going to eventually
what does that sound like? What is it?
Something like Tom, this is enough. Enough of this garbage. I don't think that's really how she sounds, but whatever.
in her lingerie, but so it was a little more compelling.
Enough of this football crap.
You want to play football? We go get a ball and kick it around in the backyard.
TB12 is dead, Tom. It is time for GB12. So I think that. I also think the thing that's going to because I think Brady's going to do what he wants, but I think the thing that's going to also put Brady over the top to retire is I don't think they can bring that team back anymore. And he did everything he could. He moved mountains to keep the whole team together. It's almost impossible to do it. It's almost impossible to do it once. It'll be impossible to do it a second time.
I agree.
And I don't think Brady's gonna. I think he is gonna hang it up. With Rodgers, I think it's interesting. I was of the mindset very early in the year. The Steelers made a ton of sense. I thought he was going to have a spot maybe there. Then it looked like everything calmed down. They looked like, they were the 1 seed. It looked like they had a chance to win it. I'm like, all right, he's going to stay in Green Bay. I think that the Bronco thing is going to be a very likely place he ends up. I mean, it's sometimes where there's smoke, there's not fire. But in this case, the offensive coordinator gets the head coaching job. They actually have a pretty talented team with a very mediocre Teddy Bridgewater. They hovered around 500. They got some weapons at receiver. They got some nice running backs. Aaron Rodgers, the only drawback to taking that job is like you're in Mahomes' division. I mean, that's a bit of a challenge. I mean, being in Mahomes' division, but he's Aaron Rodgers, and he might think, you know what, for a year or two, I don't have to beat Mahomes for the division. I just got to get in the playoffs and roll the dice. So Denver's a great football town. I do, and he's staying kind of he's not going to a big city where I don't think he'd necessarily want to be with all the scrutiny. I think he ends up a Bronco. I do. I think
I think it makes sense. And I agree with you on Brady being his last game. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, okay, you know what? He's at the end of his career. He's just launching his clothing line. His brand is picking up. You're Tom Brady. Do you want to risk going back and maybe not having as great of a year? I mean, listen, at age 44, he threw for 5,300 yards and 43 touchdowns. So, I mean, to hang your hat on that as your last year is pretty serious. And I think that could really go a long way. Not like his brand really needs it, but I think, if you're going to go out on a high note, I mean, granted, he's not going out like Peyton Manning winning a Super Bowl, but he's going out after just a ridiculous season. I think it's a good time.
He's going out. But here's the thing. The Super Bowl is very fluky to win it, right? Like every year it takes 1,000 breaks and a million things have to happen to win a Super Bowl. He, unlike Peyton Manning, is going out clearly at the top of his game. Peyton Manning was a shell of himself and rode the coattails of the Broncos defense and running the ball and making he did not matter in that Super Bowl game particularly. I don't think he scored. I don't think he threw a touchdown in that Super Bowl game. They ran the ball. They played great defense. Tom Brady's going out as the potential league MVP. He's in the conversation for league MVP. He can't help the fact that they lost a close game. It is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. That's right.
I think this would be as close to going out on top. He's going out being a great player on the field. And I think he does go out.
Yeah. I think so too. Question number 3, and this I thought was really interesting, right? I'm watching this game, and it was the Tennessee-Cincinnati game, and every time I look, Joe Burrow's on his ass. And here's my question for you: how the hell do you lose a game when you sack a quarterback 9 times?
So you know what? It's interesting. Usually you can't say the following 2 things at the same time. You can't say a quarterback got sacked 9 times and had a great game, but he actually did. And interestingly enough, what he was really smart about, and he's had some issues with throwing some big interceptions, but what he was really smart about was just taking the sack and not doing like the infamous Kyler Murray play in the playoffs where he's literally going down and he just throws it up for an interception for a touchdown. Like he took sacks. He's not the most mobile guy, Burrow, but he took the sacks that he should have taken when people were beat up the middle and he had to take sacks, but he still managed to make a million big plays. The only reason though you can lose a game where you do that if you're the Titans is because Tannehill made colossal mistakes.
Yeah, he
made colossal mistakes, did not have a very good game, and he ended up costing his team the game, who probably deserved to win, but he made too many mistakes. 3 picks, can't throw 3 picks.
No, not in that situation. Absolutely not. Question number 4: are you concerned about the Chiefs' lack of defense? Here they are in the championship game, obviously going against Cincinnati, and then in the final, if they win, they face either San Francisco or LA, who has a really good defense. So you're going to talk about a great offense against a great defense. I mean, I know that kind of their game plan is just to outscore everybody, but when does their luck run out? When do they face a good enough defensive team that they can't just move the ball like they did at the end of the last game?
Wow. So what you're saying is, when do the Chiefs run into this year's Tampa, right? Like, because the Chiefs were humming along, and then they did have those offensive line injuries, and they found a team they couldn't outscore, and the Chiefs defense isn't very good. They're a little bit opportunistic. They'll make an occasional big sack, but the idea is really it's all about the offense and then making a few plays, just a few. You don't need to make a lot. Mahomes is going to make most of them, and they won a Super Bowl doing that, by the way. And then they lost the Super Bowl because they had those injuries, and Brady outplayed Mahomes that day, but really Tampa's defense outplayed KC's offensive line badly. Um, Listen, if you're crystal balling it, it's not this weekend against the Bengals in terms of, like, I think they figure out, just in terms of, that's not an overwhelming defensive line that they're not going to handle. The Rams defensive line, or even the Niners defensive line, either one of the two could present many more challenges to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the Rams probably have enough around both sides of the ball that could be your new Tampa version of beating the Chiefs the same way,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
it could come, but listen, they are probably very likely to be at 3 Super Bowls in a row. I mean, it's pretty good.
It seems like it. It seems
Pretty
like
good.
it. Question number 5. Do you know who Les Snead is?
Les Snead.
Les
First of all, is
Snead.
that a coach?
Les Snead. He's involved in the NFL. I mean, obviously you don't know who he is, so I'm going to tell you.
Is he director of something, or I don't know?
He is
Player personnel. I don't know why the name sounds like it's an NFL guy of some sort. NFL, like, higher up.
He is the Rams GM.
Didn't know that. Okay.
And if he wins, if the Rams win the Super Bowl this year, my question is he the GM of the century? This is what he's done. People laughed at him for basically they have no picks. I mean, they traded away all their picks, right? Yeah. But here's what they have, right? This is what this guy has done, right? He's gotten Matt Stafford. He's gotten OBJ. He's gotten Von Miller. He's gotten Jalen Ramsey. He's drafted Cooper Kupp. He's drafted Aaron Donald. And as a free agent, he signed a kicker that nobody wanted by the name of Matt Gay, whose season was, let's just say his season was okay. 94% of his field goals, 98% of his extra points, 144 points on the season. I mean, if the Jets had done one move, like if they had just done one of these things, I would say the GM is fantastic. But how the hell does a guy have this much foresight to be able to put all these incredible pieces together for this team? Because if you look at those guys, that's pretty serious.
I'm trying to be objective here.
And I mean, the Jets GM, I mean, Vernon Golston was a good pick, and
No, listen, I mean, like, if the benchmark is the Jets, most people will far fly over the hurdle there.
Of course.
So it's interesting. This feels, though, like, so if we're talking 2-3 weeks from now and the Rams didn't win the Super Bowl, I don't think you're going to feel the same way, and I don't think perception is going to be the same way. Like, he went all in to win a Super Bowl. So if you're saying this to me on February 13th at about 11 o'clock at night and the Rams are hoisting the Lombardi Trophy, sure. If they lose again and now there's more cap issues and they can't keep the whole group together, and Stafford's a year older, they only have a couple-year window to win it all. So if you're going to forfeit your future, and they've forfeited their future, meaning like picks are really not there, what have you, you can't always. And now listen, they're in LA. It seems like the whole world wants to play there. They're in literally the newest stadium in the NFL. I'm sure you're going to get some free agents to sign on the cheap, older guys who want to just keep playing and go out to LA, people that have aspiring careers in, whatever outside of sports. I think will go there late in their career, but I don't know. I guess I didn't love all the moves he made. The Stafford move was a no-brainer. I gotta say, I gotta wait and see, because if they don't hoist the Lombardi Trophy, are you gonna feel it was the greatest GM moves of the last 7 years? I don't know. Well, Cooper Kupp's a great draft pick. I mean, did some great things, obviously. OBG was like a scrap heap signing, right? I mean, some of it's kind of like
fantastic. Well, listen, whatever the case may be, even if they get to the Super Bowl, I think it's still a huge win. But besides the free agent signings, which have worked out masterfully for him, I mean, to draft Kupp, to draft Donald, and then to sign Matt Gay as a free agent that nobody wanted, I
Yeah,
mean, just those three moves in itself are just are crazy, crazy great moves. So,
yeah. No,
you
he
know,
made some good ones.
it's interesting. It's interesting, but
Absolutely.
I
He
look
did it
forward to.
unconventional. I mean, he did it the way you don't typically hear the philosophy when a new GM takes over the job. It's like, we want to build through the draft. We want to do this. We want to do that. He didn't do it that way. And he hired, you probably missed the biggest thing he did when you made that list, which was hiring McVay.
Yeah,
Who is,
that was a big move.
is obviously was like what was he dubbed? The boy wonder when he was super young. He
Young,
looks like
up
he's
and coming
25.
coach. Yeah, what is he
Yeah, I
now?
mean,
30. I
and
think he turned 36.
he's already been to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, they were in a Super Bowl. They lost to the Pats. So, I mean, this would be 2 in 4 years. So,
Yeah. So something's going right. Something's going right. Game ball a little different this week. And the game ball is game ball number 1 sent out to Matt Gay, Harrison Butker, Evan McPherson, and Robbie Gould for their pressure. I mean, come on, no time left on the clock to win a game or to tie a game in the playoffs. I mean, there's nothing more pressure than that. Number 2, Mahomes, 3 touchdown passes, 1 rush. That incredible comeback. And game ball number 3, just the Chiefs-Bills team for arguably the greatest 2 minutes in professional football history.
I thought you were going to throw Josh Allen in there. Yeah, I would give it honestly to the kickers. And this is something pretty cool. Like, over our lifetime, kickers are just so, like, when you say like bigger, stronger, like if it feels like you can identify it even more than like a baseball hitter, or I mean, I know guys run a little faster and the quarterbacks throw the ball a little further, don't get me wrong, but in just like, if you were picking one thing I grew up watching that has just so eye-openingly changed, kickers used to struggle. The 50-yard kick was like pushing it to even be short. And as you got into November and December in cold weather places, they wouldn't even try kicks like that sometimes. It was like a 50-yard kick in Lambeau. Like, you're not even trying it. Now these guys, 60 yards, it's just a matter of if they're accurate. But the thing is easily reaching by half the league at least.
It's crazy.
These guys drill 50+ yard kicks like they're putting at mini golf. Like, I mean, it's just incredible. And then all those kicks that you mentioned, those game winning or game tying kicks, I mean, Butker's kick was 48 yards. The Lambeau kick, while it was short, was in tough conditions and it was like no issue. I mean, the Rams kick was easy. That was easy and in warm weather. And then even the Bengals winner, I don't think was it super close? No, it wasn't super close. It was in the high 40s or 50, so. McPherson. I mean, these guys are just incredible. I give them the game ball.
Yeah, it's like nowadays you see like a 58-yard field goal and you're like, oh wow, that's pretty normal. 56, 58, it's like no problem. But it's funny because when you look at, I'm trying to think of who the last kicker was that got in the Hall of Fame. Was it Morton Anderson? I think Morton Anderson was the last kicker that got in the Hall of Fame. I mean, could that guy ever kick a 50-yard field goal?
No, his claim to fame, I think, was just being really accurate from short distances and like.
No,
look at Justin Tucker, your boy on the Ravens, kicked a 66-yard field goal at the end of the game this year to beat the Lions or something. 66 yards, like, dude.
What is it? I don't understand what. You know what? You can say whatever you want about the Ravens, but man, do they know how to get kickers? I mean, Matt Stover was unbelievable. Now Justin Tucker is unbelievable.
Is even better. Tucker's a Hall of Famer, by the way. Not first ballot because he's a kicker, but he's going to Hall of Fame.
He should be. He should be.
Yeah,
He should be.
He's going to Hall of Fame.
I don't even know how old he is. He's still got some years left, doesn't he?
I kicked till he's 50 nowadays.
I want to see him put up a 70-yarder. Then I'll be really impressed.
I mean,
66 is ridiculous. If you can hit from 66, what's another 16 feet?
Come on.
Not a big deal. So let's talk about this week. We've got Cincinnati at KC. KC favored by a touchdown, and they're not giving Cincinnati any respect. And San Francisco at the Rams. Rams are favored by 3.5. So first things first is, I want you to tell me, what do you think each team needs to do to win? And then I want to hear your prediction.
So, I mean, we'll start with the first game. I mean, what do the Bengals need to do? I mean, Burrow needs to do his closest Josh Allen impression. Yeah. In terms of so it'll be a little different because he doesn't do his skill set isn't exactly Josh Allen's. Why I think so. He needs to be darn near perfect. He needs to make a lot of big plays, but they need to run the ball. And in my opinion, they need to possess the clock a little bit. Now, I actually think they could do that with Mixon. And I think they could run the ball on the Chiefs and have a few sustained drives just to give the Bengals defense a little bit of a chance. And I think that would probably be the recipe. And then understanding that the Bengals are probably going to have to score a ton and make one or two big defensive plays themselves, which isn't so easy against the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the Chiefs just have to be the Chiefs, right? They just need to get the ball in the playmakers' hands. Mahomes is Mahomes. And their recipe is the same, right? Ride Mahomes and make one or two big stops. Now, the Bengals are susceptible, as we just saw, to getting Burrow sacked. And if they have a couple possessions of 3 and out, the game could get away from them quick.
Yeah.
So I think for the Bengals, it's sustained drives, no 3 and outs, give the Bengals defense a chance. And for the Chiefs, it's just be the Chiefs. It's the same blueprint that they've done for 2+ years. It's going on a 3rd year. It's the same thing. Let Mahomes be Mahomes and make 1 or 2 stops. And then before I make a prediction, the Niners have an incredible running game, right? They displayed it against the Packers in horrible conditions. They are not remotely afraid of the Rams. This is a division rivalry. And I don't know if everybody knows this, but they beat the Rams both times this year. They are not remotely afraid of the Rams. They believe they're better than the Rams. And I'll tell you what I know they believe. Like I could see this if I was talking to Shanahan now. They believe they are much tougher than the Rams. They believe they run down their throat and the Rams don't want any part of them for 60 minutes. That's what they believe. And they proved it 2 times this year. They believe the Rams are LA soft and they're San Francisco tough. I don't know if that's a phrase, but that's what they believe. There's a lot of needles in the street in San Francisco. Maybe it makes you tougher. I don't know. And I think the Rams think they are the best team in the NFL, right? They have the star power. They need to keep Stafford upright. I think they believe that they're in for a dogfight in this game, but I think that, the Rams with Stafford have to make some key throws. I think they believe they need to get to Garoppolo, and they need to win a game. And I think they got to be circling the calendar saying, guys, we got to beat this team 1 time out of 3 to get to the Super Bowl. They can't beat us 3 times. Like, come on. So I think that'll be interesting. But I think when you get an NFC or an AFC conference championship with 2 teams from the same division, you can throw out a lot of things. These teams have seen each other a ton and they know each other inside and out. So I don't think you're going to trick each other. I really don't. So going back to the Bengals Chiefs prediction. So 7 points. It moved. This number moved. I think it was 5 at I think it was like 4.5 or 5 opening line, moved up to 7. Here's the thing. I think the Bengals are the story you see every once in a while in a conference title game that is slightly overachieved to get to this spot. Not that they're not good, but they're kind of now in a little bit of like shark infested waters in this game. Like this is a team who's been there, done it. They're in a first time, little bit eyes wide open look. They're overachieving expectation, right? Like they didn't expect to be here yet. Burrow's Joe Cool. I mean, I think he has some moments in this game where he's Burrow. And I think this game is close at half. And I think this game is 2 touchdowns by final score. Not a total blowout, nothing like insane, but I think it's like one of those games where the Bengals are hanging tough at half, maybe down a field goal, maybe down 6, and then they get blitzed in like 1 quarter where the Chiefs put a few on them and they win by 14 or 17. I do think the final score looks worse than the game plays out. What do you think about this game before I go to the next game?
When I look at this one, I think, I mean, you're dead on in what you're saying. But I'm looking at this and I'm looking at Joe Burrow and I'm looking at that 2-week period of time that he threw for like almost 1,000 yards and 300 touchdowns. I mean, listen, this guy can play. All right. We saw him in his Heisman Trophy year. I think he's just really coming into his own, and I think he's going to start developing into a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, if not already a top 5 quarterback. Here's what I see the difference is with Cincinnati. I see basically one word, and that is Chase. The guy's a man. The guy's a man among, I mean, it's unbelievable. And this is a rookie, right? Jamar Chase, unfreaking believable. But he's with his college quarterback who set all kinds of records at LSU. Now he's setting all kinds of records as a rookie. I don't think that KC can stop him. So, I look at this like, okay, KC does not have that great of a defense. And if Cincinnati can come up with just a couple stops also, they can keep this game close. Do I think Cincinnati's going to win this game? I don't, because I really don't think that they've got enough defense to stop Mahomes. I don't know if anybody does. But do I think that they're going to win by a touchdown? I don't think so. I don't think so. I see this being maybe a 3 or a 6 point game, because I think Burrow he's going to play out of his mind, and he has to keep the team in the game. He can't make any mistakes here. And their defense, they've got to come up. They've got to take what happened to the Bills. They've got to learn from that and say, okay, this is what we need to do with our defense. We need to make these correct adjustments. So I agree. I think that Kansas City is going to the Super Bowl, but I'm going to take Cincinnati with the points.
Got it. Okay. So you got Cincy +7.
Yep.
All right. The late game. You know what? The spread's 3.5 for the Rams. This game, so when I went into the week, I thought I was going to predict 2 blowouts. And again, I don't mean Kansas City's going to totally blow them out. I think the score is going to be a little deceiving, but I do think they're going to cover pretty comfortably at the end. This game, I know the Niners are going to be an issue for the Rams. They can run the ball. They can do things. The Rams love to get after the quarterback.
Yep.
And they love to be like bullies on the line, but the Niners run at them. And they don't really rely on throwing a ton. So as long as they don't get behind big where they have to throw, which would be a problem and would make Donald and Miller just be able to put their head down and go after the quarterback. If they can keep the game close and use Deebo Samuel and run all these different, zone read runs and keep the Rams off balance, I think they'll be an issue for the Rams.
Yeah.
I'm just torn between it's really hard to beat a team 3 times.
If
they beat them a third time, two in LA, man, the Niners would have earned getting to the Super Bowl. Think about the Niners road, right? Cowboys, Packers, and now Rams. That's a heck of a task to beat all 3 of those teams.
Yep.
I don't think the Niners get it done this time. While I love the Niners and I love their toughness and I love Deebo Samuel, I think the Rams end up winning this game by like 14 points themselves, because I'm gonna go ahead and say the Rams get out to a good lead and make the Niners more of a pass team this time, and make them have to play a game they don't want to play, and make Garoppolo do things he does not want to have to do. So in this game, I'm thinking it's probably in the 27-14, 27-17, maybe between 10 and 13 point win. Way more than the spread though. So I'll take the Rams laying 3.5.
Okay. And I look at this too, and you're absolutely right that it has got to be nearly impossible to beat a team 3 times. You look at San Francisco, nothing screams out to me that this team should be as good as they are. They win ugly games. The stats, if you look at them, are never overly impressive. Samuel is a great player. Mitchell has had a nice season running. They do a nice job running the ball. Their defense is solid. Garoppolo, I mean, could they have gotten here with somebody else? Yeah. I mean, it's just, you just don't have to make any mistakes with this team. It almost reminds me of that, in a sense, that Trent Dilfer Ravens team, where Trent Dilfer was like the most average of average quarterbacks, and he wins a Super Bowl because he doesn't make any mistakes. That was it. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at this, and the more that I look at this game, and yeah, you know what? The Rams are the pick here that you want to make. You want to make them because they've got so much firepower. They've got, their defense is crazy. That defensive line, but I keep going back to the same thing, and that is that San Francisco somehow keeps pulling out wins. I don't know how they do it. I look at the stat lines and I'm like, how the hell did they win that game? So, I look at this again, and it's 2 teams, like you said, that know each other really, really well because they play in the same division. So is this game going to be close? I think it is. I think it's going to be very close. And I'm looking for my man, Matt Gay, who could possibly get some votes for MVP, to come in at the very end on a tied game and once again kick a field goal to win the game with no time on the clock. So again, I agree with you. I think that the Super Bowl is going to be KC and the Rams, but I don't think either of these teams are going to cover this week. I like the Rams to win on a last-second field goal and beat San Francisco by 3 points.
So for our betting viewers at home, we've given them conflicting information to digest. And I would just leave our bettors, our viewing public at home with just, 4-0 last week, boys and girls.
That's what
stick with the king. Stick with the king.
I mean, listen, we can go over.
No, I'm kidding. Listen, who knows? Who knows? We'll
Dude, you also did go 60% on the season, so I mean,
hey, who knows?
Listen. You don't know, but you know what? Either way, we both are predicting the same Super Bowl.
I mean, I also told you Georgia was going to beat Alabama, so I've been on a good run lately.
All right, man. Now I'm just getting annoyed. I'm getting angry. Couple more things I want to talk about. I want to stay with the NFL, but I think that the Chiefs-Bills game brings a really interesting issue, and I know what I'm going to say here, and that is the overtime rules. You know, and I saw I think it was a tweet from a baseball player that said, "Could you imagine if a baseball game went to extra innings and the team that got up first, the guy hits a home run, the game's over?" You know, and it's kind of like the same thing. It's like, I think that maybe this is something that's going to allow the NFL to go back and look at these overtime rules. Because let's be honest, right? If that overtime rule wasn't in effect, the final score of that game could have been 150 to 149.
So there's
in one overtime. In one overtime.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like anytime a rule is going to be changed, it's because typically something massively egregious occurs, or the fans are watching something so amazing, feel like it's an anticlimactic ending or like an unfair situation like this. I recall very distinctly, after the overtime rules have been in existence for a long time, the idea behind the rule change that occurred last, which was you can't win on a field goal, right? Like you can't leave it up to a coin toss, right? That was the big thing. It was just coming up to a coin toss. Team would win the coin toss and they'd win 60% of the games. And it was like, you have to put a measure in place. So if you can hold them to a field goal, you can get a chance to get the ball. And that's what the current rule is, right? Like if you just can hold them at least to a field goal, you get the ball and a chance to tie or win, what have you.
Yep.
Most people thought that was a good rule. Like, okay, now we've taken away the garbage field goal where you just try to get in field goal position, you win the toss and you win the game. I'm not such a fan of like now changing that, because you happen to have a one-off situation where there's these two juggernaut offenses, one went down, scored a touchdown. I mean, in my heart of hearts, it's like, could the Bills have held them to a freaking field goal? Like, sure, they could have. They didn't. They could have. The problem, if you go with this rule, is do you do this rule for just the playoffs, or do you do it for the season? Because if you do this for the season, the whole point of shortening the overtime quarter and all this other stuff is they don't want these games dragging forever in the middle of a season. Because if you have 8 or 10 of these type of games, it really adds a lot of time. Guys are on the field 5 quarters, what have you. Do you end it in a tie, or do you keep playing? Yeah. Do you make it mandatory to go for 2 to end the game, like the stupid college rule now, where after 2 overtimes, they go to just 2-point conversions, which I hate. It gets dicey. Like we always react to something that happens, and sometimes we make it a worse. Something gets born out of it that's worse. So that would be my only caution, is like, let's not make it worse than it is. I don't hate the current rule. Hey, hold them to a field goal, you get a chance to get the ball back. I don't think that's horrible. I hate the college football. I hated to put the ball in the 25, and I hate even more after 2 overtimes, you got to go for 2. I mean, I think you talk about gimmicky, that's gimmicky. That's like really bad. So I don't know. I don't know if I want to change it, to be honest.
I'm thinking maybe you change it for the playoffs.
Maybe, yeah. But then you get into that whole, like, do you want different set of rules for the season and the playoffs? Do we just call it the Josh Allen and Mahomes if they ever play again rule? Hey, hold on, time out. Remember that thing we talked about? It's only if these 2 guys play, because we know how it could end.
You know what? Listen. They change rules all the time in the NFL. We know that. So we'll see what they decide in the off season. I mean, you're going to have guys that are going both directions. And, we'll see. I think it's got a legitimate chance as anything else of being changed. But, who knows?
I wouldn't mind just, like a hockey style rule. Hey, it goes to overtime. Best 3-on-3. Let's go.
I like that.
Best 3-on-3. Let's go.
Let's just
imagine Tyreek Hill 3-on-3. Holy crap. Throw a bubble screen to Tyreek Hill, touchdown. It's like Tecmo Bowl.
Right.
Tecmo Bowl? Guy's gone.
Dude, I love it. I love Tecmo Bowl.
Touchdown. That'd be hilarious.
You got a center, you got a receiver, and you got a quarterback, and that's it. And then on the other side, you got a
defensive, a corner, and a safety.
There you go. That's it.
Good luck.
That'd be pretty funny.
Yeah. Hilarious.
One other thing that I want to talk about with the NFL is as the NFL has enjoyed so much success from last week, well, guys that weren't playing didn't necessarily enjoy as much success. And I'm going to give you four interesting things that happened. So we've got Nate Hobbs, who's a cornerback from Las Vegas. He was pulled over going 110 miles an hour. So that's a problem. Malik McDowell, the defensive tackle of Cleveland, he was actually arrested. He assaulted a police officer, but when they found him, he was actually in a school zone, buck naked, walking around. I thought that was really interesting. And, it just goes to show you, man. I mean, as funny as that sounds, and the pictures were even funnier,
I don't mean to laugh at it, but
does this guy have CTE already? I mean, is this, there's obviously something going on. And then they got him to the hospital and allegedly he didn't even remember any of that happening. So I don't even know what's going on. You had Willie Gay, who's a linebacker for KC. He actually was, he was arrested for property damage. And these are funny. Like 3 of these are really funny. He actually broke into the home of his son's mother and he broke her vacuum cleaner. Okay. And honestly, he got arrested for that. I'm not making this up. Okay. This is ridiculous. And then my favorite one. Okay. I don't know if you heard this one. Okay. His name is Levetti McCray. He's a linebacker for Jacksonville, right? He was driving really fast. The cops, they got him on the radar or whatever. They pull up alongside him. He gives him the finger and then he speeds off. Eventually they catch him down the road and they arrest him, of course.
Yikes.
Dude, I got nothing. I got nothing. I mean, listen, you're an NFL player. That doesn't mean that you're above the law. That doesn't mean that you're, that nothing can ever happen to you. Okay. Think when you act like a jackass, things are going to happen to you. If you're going to go and you're going to confront your baby mama, don't break her vacuum. What did that vacuum ever do to you? That's what I'm saying, Poor vacuum.
Now, I'd like to know a little more about this vacuum story. Was this an old vacuum that was already on the fritz? Was it already going out, or was it like a new Hoover? What did he bring?
That's the question. I mean, was he swinging it at her and he hit a wall and it broke, or did he say?
Did he do like the old break the dirt devil right over the knee? Did he do one of those jobs? What did he do?
See, I would love to see video of. Bo Jackson style, just angry, he just breaks
right
it
over the head. Right over the head. Snap the dirt devil.
I like that too. I want to get into a couple just quick things before we leave. And congratulations to David Ortiz as the only guy that got elected into the Hall of Fame. I still think it's a complete travesty that
I know.
That
I'm sure
Bonds
you're steaming mad.
But I wanted to tell you one thing because I think this is interesting, and then I wanted to ask your opinion on one other thing. David Ortiz's on-base percentage was 380. This was an interesting stat. If you took every single one of Barry Bonds' 762 home runs and turned them into outs, his on-base percentage would have been 384. Okay, I'm just putting it out there. Okay,
David Ortiz was not for everyone in terms of like loving his game, right? Like when you think of David Ortiz, you think of massively clutch home runs.
Yeah.
Like that's the first thing you think of. World Series with a team that had a history of not winning the World Series, right? Like, and so that's his lore. Like his lore is big, massive home runs, winning 3 rings with the Red Sox, 2 or 3, and just clutch hitting. Because he was like a DH mostly, a little bit of first base, mostly a DH, but that's what you think of. And he rode a historic franchise in reversing some long-standing curses there. And that's his claim to fame. But I mean, when you do it David Ortiz is another one of those guys. And I always say this about Jeter, and it always annoys my Yankee family fandoms. But there are 2 players that if you put them in the like Kansas City Royals, or you put them on certain teams that no one cares about, I don't think David Ortiz or Derek Jeter are nearly as famous or as thought of as highly. Like, I think a lot of what they're famous for is being clutch in big markets that were massive baseball towns.
Yep.
And it means a lot. And by the way, it's not easy to be clutch in New York and Boston for years and years like they both were. But I think they're both similar in that regard. Now, Jeter's a much better athlete, but I'm just saying, I think they're known more for their clutchness and being in a big city. I don't think if David Ortiz was a Minnesota Twin his whole career, anybody would care about him. And I always argued if Jeter was a Kansas City Royal, nobody would have cared about him. So
yeah, it's true.
Congrats to Big Papi.
It's true.
He made it.
Yeah, no, listen, it was deserved. It was definitely deserved. I want to get your thoughts on another issue, and that is blank Hall of Fame ballots. Guys sending in, I don't know, his protest or whatever. Writers and one in particular, I don't know if you know this guy. He's on ESPN a lot. He works. I think he writes for the Boston Globe. His name is Dan Shaughnessy. Yeah. Last year, his ballot, he voted for Derek Jeter. This year on his ballot, this is a Boston guy. He again voted for one person, Jeff Kent. Like,
so he's purposefully saying anybody remotely attached to steroids, I'm not voting.
Yeah. Like, this guy is just, I'm mightier than thou. I'm perfect. To me, I look at this guy and I'm like, all right, this guy's an a-hole. That's kind of how I look at it,
Dan Shaughnessy is a little bit of that too, by the way.
He is an
a-hole. He has that reputation. Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on like blank ballots or guys that are voting for one person? Like to me, it's like, why do these guys have so much power? Why do they get to? Why does this guy get to play judge and jury over guys that are suspected of cheating, but are never really? It's never really been proven that they cheat.
Well, here's the thing, and so this isn't really about Shaughnessy per se. I mean, I don't have a problem, and this is where we'll probably differ, but I'll agree with you in another point. I don't have a problem with protesting all the steroid guys. Like, if that's what I said, I'd put a separate wing in. I've been on record as saying, put a separate wing in, let it be known this was the era of steroids. Lots of people were accused. A lot of it can't be proven, but we have reason to believe, and we create this wing and you put them all in. That's my thought. But I don't have a problem with somebody saying, I'm not putting any of these guys in that I think were suspected of it, or we have a positive test or whatever. I have no problem with it. But I do understand people having a problem with Ortiz getting nominated as a first ballot Hall of Famer when it did leak that he did test positive and there was an actual positive test. So the hypocrisy is through the roof here. Like, you could say, well, that test was never supposed to be released. It was a leak and whatever, but it still went out there. So if Bonds and Clemens aren't in on high probability suspicion, then how is Ortiz a first ballot Hall of Famer? Like, I get, and Yankee fans, I've heard from many of them who are super angry that why is Ortiz a first ballot Hall of Famer? And that's a Yankee thing, but it's also, listen, it's a hypocrisy thing. So I don't know, is there a better way though? Like, you're saying, like, why do these guys have so much power? But what's a better alternative to voting Hall of Famers in?
It's a great question, and I did a lot of research on this, and and I looked at, okay, are there cheaters that are in the Hall of Fame? And we look at and I think I've talked about this before, amphetamines ran rampant in baseball, 60s, 70s, even the 50s. And allegedly the guy that first brought those back, they called them greenies, and everybody took them and everybody knew about them. The guy that brought them back was Ted Williams from Korea. That was allegedly what it is. And then you had guys like Willie Stargell that were just known there was somebody went to court and some players testified that Willie Stargell provided them with amphetamines. Okay, well, he was a first ballot Hall of Famer also. Mickey Mantle, not many people know, in 1961, he missed part of the season, I think the end of the season, because he got an infection from a steroid injection that he had. So even steroids back then were in their early stages. You had a guy like Mickey Mantle who...
I thought you were going to say Mickey Mantle had vodka infused amphetamines.
No, that's another guy, and that's Whitey Ford, who was also known for basically, you remember the movie Major League, when that old pitcher was hanging on and he takes off his shirt and he's got like just crap everywhere that's Whitey Ford.
Yeah.
Okay. Whitey Ford was like that. He got in. Gaylord Perry was known for the spitball. These guys, some of these guys would doctor up the ball like you wouldn't believe to try to get advantage. There's managers. I know there was a quote from Earl Weaver. It was like, cheating isn't the problem. It's just don't get caught.
Getting caught's the problem. Yeah.
Like, everybody's always been trying to steal signs and get that competitive advantage. Hank Greenberg, one of the greatest hitters of all time, said that he wouldn't have been half the hitter he was if he didn't know the pitches that were coming. They were able to steal the signs back in the 30s. He knew what pitch was coming, and that's why he went on to hit 500 and some home runs. He was a tremendous player. And then my favorite is Ty Cobb. like nowadays, why hasn't Ty Cobb been canceled? He was a raging racist. I mean, this guy was, so when you look at that, and Pete Rose bet on baseball, but last time I looked, betting on baseball is now legal. So because it wasn't legal then,
now you can't watch a game without every commercial being DraftKings.
That's right.
That's right. BetOnThis.com.
So to me, there's really it's part of the game. It's always been part of the game. And guys that look the other way, I mean, if you're talking about making a separate area in the Hall of Fame, well, basically you got to take 75% of the Hall of Famers and put them there, because there's been that much cheating.
I get it.
Cheating to me is just part of baseball. It's like, I remember when I was in Little League and I was playing catcher, I would put my mitt on my knee as I'm calling a sign. And why did I do that? I was told so that the third base coach can't see the sign.
Yeah, I mean, listen.
Yeah, that's just part of the game, no?
And baseball is held to a higher standard in this regard by its writers. There's no writer worried about steroids in football. I mean,
happens all the time.
In
Guys,
the 70s, 80s, and 90s, they were all juiced up. If you look at the size of them and everything, like they were all juiced up. Nobody cared because it was football, and it was like it's a collision sport. So do whatever you can, right? That was their version of getting an edge. Baseball has been, because baseball has glamorized and the statistics, right? It's the sport that the statistics have always been there. And it's a different sport. And so it's always been held to different standards, which is why Rose never got put in the Hall of Fame for betting on it, which was considered the most taboo thing you could have did back then. And then the steroid era, let's be honest, they obviously looked the other way for many, many years, maybe even more than a decade, or more than two decades before it became so in their face that they had to do something. And Canseco was a big part of breaking all of it out. Because he was angry at baseball, or else probably none of this would have came out.
That's probably
and then they finally had to do something about it. And I understand your arguments, by the way. I totally get what you're saying. I don't think it's unfair to say just put them all in. Just look at, did they deserve to be in on just credentials? If they did, put them in. If they didn't, don't put them in. I'm not totally against that either. And I do think it's an odd thing that Bonds and Clemens, and there's going to be some others, but they seem to be the poster children. It'll be interesting to see if A-Rod gets the same poster child or gets the same treatment long term. If the three of them do and they never make the Hall of Fame, they are three of the greatest players of all time: A-Rod, Bonds, and Clemens. Clemens is not on the league to me with Bonds and A-Rod, because Bonds and A-Rod were always great, and Clemens had some dips in his career, like noticeable dips in his career, but they're three Hall of Famers, and it's a shame in that regard they're not going to be in. So
it's interesting. It's interesting. So I wanted to leave you with this, and then I wanted to make an announcement for our audience out there. So I'm sitting on my couch. I don't know what it was. Might have been Sunday night or something. I don't even know. And I'm just, I pull up the guide and I'm just looking through channels to see what's going on. And I see that ESPN 8, I think ESPN 8, the Ocho, they've got on, it says Pogopalooza, right? So I'm like, all right, what the hell is this, right? So I turn it on, and it's exactly what you think. All right, it's a competition with people on pogo sticks. All right, and so I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I wonder what else this ridiculous channel has, right? So I look, and I find that an hour later is the 2021 U.S. Air Guitar Championship. All right, so I start watching it, and like the announcers are being all serious. Oh, this guy is coming back. He's doing this. Look at the outstanding air guitar on this guy. And I'm like, seriously, are you embarrassed? Are you that hard up that you want to be on TV that bad? That, oh, what does your dad do for a living? Oh yeah, he's the broadcaster of the U.S. Air Guitar Championships. Oh wow, that's impressive. Wow,
how do you get that gig, right?
I mean, my God. So the big announcement that I want to let everybody know is that Phil and the Mike officially are trying to qualify for the 2022 U.S. Air Guitar Championships. I think we've got a legitimate chance to win, because, how tough can it be? If anybody ever gets a chance to look up the 2021 Air Guitar Championships and just see how ridiculous it is. Okay. It's the dumbest thing I ever saw. And I'm looking at these people, and they're going on and on about how great this one person is. And I'm like, okay, for one, this guy looks like there's something mentally wrong with him. For two, he's not really playing the air guitar. He's just dancing around in his underwear, looking like a complete idiot. I don't understand it. So anyway,
I think it'd be hysterical though. I think it'd be hysterical.
Right. I mean, it's just
how do you win that job as an announcer? Do you win that job as an announcer because you go on to audition for a baseball game and you go, just run me through one mock home run. All right, I'll do that. And here's the pitch, and he hits the ball deep to left field. He scored a touchdown. You're the air guitar guy. Cool. What's going on here? Oh, sorry about that.
Not only that,
how bad do you have to screw up your gig to get?
Let me ask you this, and this is the big question, and we'll leave it at this. I want to give everybody something to ponder. Is which one do you think is more? Which one do you think is above the other one? You know, as a pogo announcer or an air guitar announcer? Like where's the bottom?
Pogo's better.
Pogo's above that.
Pogo's got some athletic ability, and like there's some it feels sporty-ish.
Don't get me wrong. These guys on the pogo, I mean, they're doing flips and all kinds of.
It's sporty-ish. Yeah,
but it's a friggin' pogo stick for God's sake.
But you could be 800 pounds into air guitar. Give me pogo over air guitar.
Yeah. Well.
And if you did I want to see you pogo over this mountaintop and not die, like then you can make it Evil Knievel-esque. Like then you
right?
Now I want to go there and do it.
Yeah, right.
Darren Michael, he's attempting to clear the Grand Canyon on this pogo stick. Let's be quiet.
I like the combination. What about tightrope over the Grand Canyon on a pogo stick?
Now we're talking. Now we're talking 50 million views on YouTube day one. Let's go.
Seriously. And the chances of that guy making it are, I'd say, pretty much zero. Same as the Jets getting to the Super Bowl next year. So, all right, my man. Great episode as always, guys. Enjoy the weekend. Let's hope for some good games. They should be some good games, unless you're Phil and you think that there's going to be some blowouts in at least one in Kansas City. But we'll see. Listen to us. If you like us, keep listening. If you don't like us, try us out again. Tell people you know.
Give us more chances.
Keep it going. All right. We're having fun. Okay. I got the haircut. Look at this. Even the sides are short. I cut off the beard first time in 2 years. I cut it off. The first thing I said was, "Oh my God, you're getting old." So just let's keep going with this, man. We're having fun with it. Phil, always great seeing you. And we'll look forward to seeing everybody soon for another episode of Phil and the Mic.
Enjoy the weekend.
See you guys.